Okay, good evening. I'd like to call the December 4th, 2017 Davie County Commissioners meeting to order. At this time, if you would join me in the invocation. Dear God, as we come before you this evening, we're so thankful to live in Davie County, thankful to live in the United States. We're thankful for all the blessings that you bring to us and that we enjoy. As we move into the holiday season or into the Christmas season, help us to be mindful of what the true meaning of Christmas is. We stop to remember all the people in our community that are facing various struggles. You know their needs. Please be with them. Tonight we ask for your wisdom and discernment in this meeting, and what is positive from this meeting, we all the glory to you. In your name, amen. Amen. If you will stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. Thanks for being here. At this time, we will go to the election of the officers for the commission for next year. I will turn that over to Mr. Vogler.
Okay, and members of the board and people out in the audience, this is the first of December's meeting. And on the December's meeting of each year, we do elect officers for chair and vice chair pursuant to our rules of procedure. So at this time, I would suggest that the board consider making a motion to nominate one or more individuals for chair.
I make a motion that Mr. Reniger be nominated as the chair.
Okay. Do we have a second to that motion?
A second.
Okay, do we have any other motions? Okay. If not, we have one motion on the floor to nominate Terry Reniger as chair for this ensuing year. Everybody raise their hand. 4. Those opposed. Mr. Reniger, you have been elected chair for this coming year. Next, we have the position of vice chair. Do we have any motions from the floor to nominate anyone as vice chair?
Yes, sir. I would nominate John Ferguson for vice chair for the coming year.
Okay. We have a nomination for Mr. Ferguson. Mr. Ferguson is vice chair. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, at this time we would vote on the vice chair. All in favor of John Ferguson as vice chair, raise your hand. All opposed? Mr. Ferguson, you have been nominated and elected as vice chair. This time I would turn the meeting back over then to the chairman for the business.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vogler. All right. Next item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. So someone entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you. Before we move to the public comment period, and while we have a good number here, I want to make a acknowledgement of something that happened here recently. Back in November, one of our own, Mr. Mark Jones, was nominated to the Republican Party Hall of Fame, and I think you were inducted November 13th. Is that correct?
I think so.
So I want to congratulate him and let everyone know that. And Commissioner Jones, anything you'd like to say?
No, I appreciate you acknowledging that, Terry. Thank you.
All right. Well, good job. So I know you've worked hard for the party and for the citizens of Davie, so thank you. All right. Next we move to the public comment period. Mr. Vogler.
Okay, we've got 2 items for public comment tonight. The first one is a zoning map amendment, And we would have Mr. Mead will come forward, I guess, on that. He is present. Now, sitting back there. He's hiding.
Public comment.
Oh, public comment. I'm sorry. Public
Yeah,
comment.
yeah,
There is no one for public comment.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Seeing none, now we'll go to public
Yeah.
comments.
We
I'd already clicked on the
all want
next
to get
line.
out of here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Vogel was trying to put me on the spot for public comments. Mr. Chairman, before you tonight, you have zoning map amendment 01-17. This is a request by Baltimore RE LLC, care of Robert Baldwin, to rezone 4.79 acres of property from residential 20 to highway business. The current property is located at 4665 US Highway 158, across from the intersection of Baltimore Road. And then the property is further described as Davie County Tax Parcel D7-160. It should also be noted that currently the Quality Design Overlay District would still apply to this piece of property, so just the underlying district is what is being requested to be rezoned. As I stated, the request is to rezone the property from R20 to HB Highway Business. Included in your agenda package, you see there is a zoning map. Much of the property in and around is zoned R20. It should be noted that the property to the very eastern property line, that is the town of Bermuda Run's ETJ line, and they designate that area as residential mix. It's a mix of residential and some light type commercial type uses are allowed within that district. The property currently has a single family dwelling and is primarily consists of a wooded lot. The Davie County Land Use Plan designates this area as a commercial mixed use area and is designated as a secondary growth area on the growth enhancement strategy. As I mentioned, the property is on US Highway 158. That is a 120-foot right-of-way, 12-foot lane, 20-foot wide minor arterial road that currently serves a count of 6,200 vehicles today, average ADT, but is capable of serving up to 15,000 vehicles per day. It should be noted that the Bermuda Run land use plan was just recently updated. They have that area designated as Enterprise Center and as Village Residential. The Enterprise Center is, I guess, a comparable type use that for the county would be more of a light kind of industrial type use, medical, light warehousing, things of that nature. And the residential, Village Residential is similar to the Kenderton type residential development. The issues to consider, the board may not consider any specific use for the property, but all those possible uses that may be allowed in the highway business district. The board may approve, deny, or defer the request for additional consideration. However, the board should consider the following in making its recommendation: the property's potential as a commercial use, the property's potential as a future or continued use as a residential use, the property's location along a major arterial, the Bermuda Run future land use designations. The planning board heard it at this request at its October 24th meeting and voted by a unanimous vote of 6 in favor and none opposed. Board action for you tonight is for the rezoning is to move that the following statement be adopted in support of a motion to approve that the amendment promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare, is consistent with all applicable adopted plans, and considers the action to be reasonable in the public interest, that said property furthers the goals, objectives, actions, and policies of the land development plan and growth enhancement strategy, because it is in harmony with the surrounding areas and uses, and it fits within the future land use plans as it integrates within the land uses of the county by limiting rural areas to generally accepted commercial uses, and it's in its vicinity commercially planned property and should not exceed the existing road capacity. Second, move that the following statement be adopted to support in motion to deny. So you would need to state your reasons why you would deny, or 3, defer the amendment for additional consideration. So this does require a public hearing. Subject property has been posted for notice of this meeting. An ad has been ran in the Davie Enterprises, and notification letters sent out to those adjoining property owners within 500 feet of the subject property. I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that the board may have at this time.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Meadwell?
Would the specific use of the property then have to go back to the Bermuda Run?
Yes, sir. The piece of property is within our planning and zoning jurisdiction, so this board, you have ultimate control over that land use. I was just merely pointing out that the town of Bermuda Run's ETJ, their land use control is that common eastern property line.
But there's, none of it's in the ETJ.
No, this is solely within your discretion. This is the county's jurisdiction for land use.
Mr. Meadwell, does, this property line is directly across from Baltimore Road?
It does.
Does it interfere anyway with the future expansion of Baltimore Road?
And we discussed this at the planning board meeting, and, you know, the planning board, you know, what should we do, basically. Right now, you know, that is a plan that this board has endorsed, but, you know, right now, it's just a line on a map. There are no engineer drawings for this. We don't know when this project will ever be funded, if ever. We would like for it to be. I think that we would still consider to have this on our transportation plan to do that. However, we just don't know when it will happen. And you know, the planning board, it just wasn't a valid enough reason. We can't hold a development on a piece of property on something that may or may not happen now or sometime in the future. It will just be the DOT when right-of-way acquisition comes to that piece of property, they'll be dealing with that property, just like they would do with any new road extending across any property. They would have to do this regardless if the property was remaining residential. They would have to do it. The property, if they wanted to use it for residential purposes and subdivide the property, that would be something by right that they would be able to do, and you would still be in the same situation. Question what those impacts could or may not be for the development of the property. I don't, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. All too clearly.
All too, well, I understand.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Meadwell? Seeing none, this is a public hearing, so I will turn it over to Mr. Vogler.
Chair has announced this is the date and hour of the public hearing on the proposal to modify Chapter 155 of North Carolina, the Davie County zoning ordinance to rezone parcel D700000160 from residential 20 to highway business. There's been due publication of notice of public hearing in the newspaper. General circulation in Davie County is required, and the clerk of the board has attached the affidavit showing publication in said paper on a date at least 10 days prior to today's date. I would ask all who wish to comment at this public hearing come forward to the podium, state your full name for the board, and then comment on the proposal.
Good evening. My name's Neil Douglas Cornazzer. I live here in Davie County most all of my life. I'm a member of the Baltimore LLC, the group that is putting this out for proposal. Just like to say, at the encouragement of Mr. Meadwell, and we also took a step hiring Stillman Associates, who's a well-known civil and planning group in the Triad. The first thing we did was try to check the box with the Department of Transportation because we knew the sensitivity that it could be there now or in the future. It was described to us that this is not a part of any traffic plan within the state at this time. They could even see as far as 10 to 12 years if it were ever going to come to fruition. I think there's some factors that go along with this location that also time with the interstate and national committees that hinder putting an exit that close to an existing exit at exit 180. So our intentions, at this time, we just thought that the parcel in its highest and best use would be highway business, given the surrounding uses, and similar parcels located upon Highway 158 corridor. So, again, we wanted to check the box that we were not going to interfere with or impede with any immediate future use of the property, and that was what we were gathered here with Mr. Meadwell and Stillman Associates. So we would propose to vote in favor of the the rezoning. Any questions I can answer? I'd be happy to.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Do you have a specific vision, Mr. Nance, for what the use of the property will be? Since it's right across the street from the church.
Sure. Nothing that wouldn't be a tasteful business use for the property. At this time, we are just now trying to get some engineering underway. There's some challenges with the topography of the property that will hopefully not limit the development of it to a certain degree. We were encouraged to get it rezoned before we started spending much money to try to figure out, what we can create. So, again, my day job is commercial real estate. I think the approach to the property would somehow figure out what the highest and best use of that is. But at this time, we have not determined 100% what the development would be at this time. I will say one thing. We also met with Mr. Terry Brawley, had a few conversations with him, again, trying to check the box on the future, not impeding, future development. And his only advice was, I would go ahead and build it. If you do, try to move it over to the left-hand side of the parcel in case, a road ever does come through there. So I think that's certainly something we take into consideration as we move forward.
Mr. Meadwell, then, the specifics of the use of the property, if you don't mind, would have to then come back to the planning board in terms of buffers, those types of things that would relate to the specific use that they want to bring to the property.
Just a point of just procedural, you're in public hearing. Do you want to close that first and then bring that back? And
Whatever. Hold the question. Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Knatz or any other comments?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Luke Dickey. I'm with Stimmel Associates, 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27103. Mr. Kornatzer kind of covered it basically, what they're interested in the property. So they have hired us to kind of look at it, the highest and best use, and eventually what can fit on the property. But as we're going through it right now, like I talked about, is the zoning process to kind of fit it for that highway business. Mr. Meadwell had mentioned before that this area is designated as a commercial mixed use, so we're falling within the area plan designation for this. He had also mentioned that the quality design overlay district, that's an important point because that also dictates where building placement goes, where parking placement goes, signage sizes, and make sure we have the right buffering adjacent to any of the residential properties along that area as well. So as we go through the site plan process, once the use is kind of identified, we review that with Mr. Meadwell to make sure we're meeting all of those overlay district requirements. Also, he had mentioned, that the capacity, of course, of 158 is there for any development for commercial use. In terms of Baltimore Road, as we look at really that site plan and the goal of a commercial development, that would be a great intersection if that was eventually to connect to the interstate at that point and to 158. So that's a good hard corner location if that was to go through. So as we go through the site planning process, we'll look to see, what can be accommodated for that road potentially to go through if it makes sense for the property's use at that point. So, but we're happy to answer any questions that you may have and look for your support tonight on this zone. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Dickey? Thank you.
Anyone else, either for or against? If you would, come to the podium. Mr. Chairman, seeing no one further coming to comment, I would now turn the public hearing back over to you as board chair. Closing the public comment section of this public hearing, provide you the opportunity to discuss among yourselves what, if any, action you wish to take or any additional questions you might have of Mr. Meadwell.
Thank you, Mr. Brogler. At this point, we'll declare the public hearing closed. And Mr. Meadwell.
You're correct. This would go back to our review process. This project review, basically, site plan submitted, those interested parties, internal staff, as well as Department of Transportation, even to some degree, if they're Division of Environment Quality, would all be aware of this project. As the applicant has stated, this isn't a quality design overlay, so there is some additional landscaping requirements that would be required for those additional setbacks, building placements, so all those things would be looked at. So.
Thank you. All right. Anybody have any comments or they'd like to state for the record? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on the rezoning.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the zoning as presented, raise your hand. That passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, next we have a second public hearing for the proposed change to the sewer regulations.
And Mr. Chair, in that matter, this is a second public hearing involving the modification of Chapter 53 of our Code of Ordinance. This is the same amendment that you heard last month. Staff had some concerns as whether or not the public notice met the letter of the law as publication. Felt it's proper to have another public hearing at this time on this matter, and we have re-advertised this matter, and it is ready now for public hearing.
All right, so as such,
Okay, you've announced this date and hour of the public hearing. The proposal is to modify Chapter 53, Section 53.001 through 53.117 of the Davie County Sewer Ordinance. There's been public notice there has been notice duly publicized in a newspaper within general circulation in Davie County as required by law. The clerk of the board has attached the affidavit showing publication. Said paper on a date at least 10 days prior to the date of this hearing. I would ask that anyone who wishes to comment at this public hearing come forward to the podium, state your full name for the board, and then comment on the proposal. Mr. Chairman, seeing no one come forward to comment, I'll now turn the public hearing back over to you as board chair. Close the public comment section of this public hearing, providing the board the opportunity to discuss among yourselves what, if any, action you would take in regards to this matter.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Vogler. Okay, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Stated we did chat about this last month. Has anyone got any questions or input on this matter? Seeing none, entertain a motion to adopt the proposed changes to the sewer regulation.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. That is approved 5-0. All right, next we have a presentation on some capital improvement updates, and Mr. Eller.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I wanted to take this opportunity to have Brad Blackwater, our project manager, to come up and just kind of give you an update on some things that are happening at the county level. We have a lot of movement on a lot of different projects. We're not doing a PowerPoint or anything like that. We've asked them to come and do a verbal update and kind of set the stage for what's coming in January as we go into the budget process on a lot of our capital projects. So, Brad, welcome. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners. I'm just going to take a little bit of your time tonight to explain exactly where we are with the Davie County High School repurposing project. Give you a little preface to a few presentations you'll receive in January. Give your board approval tonight to move forward on the conceptual master plan for the repurposing project. The brief overview, as the facility stands now, the school board still has their demolition contract in progress. I was down there on site today. The property looks great. The demolition stage of that contract is complete. They're now doing site work and grading, which they hope to complete this week or next week. So there's going to be a little gap between what you see happening in the next few weeks to acquiring property with the transition between the county and the school board in February. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that's going to be taking place between now and February. The county's entered into our own demolition contract to demo the B building and the cafeteria. We currently have our asbestos abatement testing. We're awaiting those findings so we can move forward with our architecture and doing our demolition contract and put that out for bid. Along with that, we're also engaging with our selected firm on RFQ for architectural design, construction documents of the park itself. That timeline looks to be acquiring the property in February, transition. Our demo to begin shortly after. The bid date for phase 1 is hopefully be in April of 2018, award bid, and construction begin in July. I'm not going to put a date on completion of phase 1 until we get the architecture further with construction documents and design. We really don't know exactly how that time frame is going to lay out once we get everything there. So I'd like to wait to hold off on the completion date for phase 1. Looking ahead to January meeting, you'll receive 2 presentations, one from myself, one from Mosley Architecture. Mosley come in and done a space study for here in the county. They will be presenting on their findings, basically on their recommendations of space and safety needs for our county buildings and departmental needs. And our capital improvement presentation is going to correlate with their findings. We're going to indicate our priorities over the next few years based on the correlation with the staff's analysis of Mosley's data, along with the other departmental needs that we see necessary. In the meantime, between now and then, we'll be talking to our financial advisors, basically to see what our financial capacity is for our capital improvement plans. If you have any questions, I'm more than glad to answer them right now. That's just a quick, brief overview of what's coming in the future.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Blackwater? As we will recall from last month's presentation, the capital improvement plan is quite in depth, so we'll be looking to see where we can go with that. So that'll be great.
Mr. Blackwater's doing an excellent job for us, commissioners. We should be proud of him, and he's going to get even more busy than he is now in January. So good job.
Thank you. All right, next we move to the consent agenda. Mr. Eller, is there anything on here for context you need to share with us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. One thing I do want to point out on the consent tonight, you're looking at a few items with Cardinal Innovations. I want to talk to you about that. One is an appointment to the advisory committee, and that's someone who represents our county from that perspective, and then also a recommendation to appoint our chairman to the nominate committee. I want to tell you kind of what's happening in that regard. Many of you may have heard in the media on November 27th, the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services temporarily assumed leadership of Cardinal Innovations. There's lots of reasons for that, but one of the pieces of that included them basically revoking the current board in assuming that leadership capacity. So over the next week, actually, this week and next, they will be going through a process of making sure that each county has adequate representation on that new board structure. We feel confident and hopeful and good about that new board structure for obvious reasons. And so our chairman will be representing our county based on the recommendation tonight, should you approve that appointment. What we're told as far as the timeline goes is very aggressive, that this new board will be appointed by December 15th in accordance with North Carolina general statutes. And at that point, the board will begin reassuming oversight of Cardinal Innovations. So that is, as I said earlier, a very aggressive timeline, but it is something that DHHS feels is needed to get the local governance back in place. The other piece that you'll find on the agenda in relation to Cardinal Innovations is the performance-based contract. That contract gives Davie County the flexibility to decide how we want our maintenance of effort dollars spent. And that's very important. Some counties write a check and it goes straight to the MCO, which is in our case Cardinal Innovations. So for us, we're able to help divvy out and decide how those dollars need to be used locally. So those things in relation to cardinal innovations you'll see on the agenda. There are several other things on there, many of which y'all are already aware of, but also want to point out is some of the transportation high-impact, low-cost projects that you'll see on there as well. And that kind of correlates to what we were talking about a minute ago with our zoning amendment. You know, we do have some projects that we do think are going to add value. Mr. Meadwell has talked to you about some of those in the past. You've seen some presentations about some of those, but those are also things that are going to be value-added for us in relation to some of our traffic concerns. So the resolution is on there to look at those tonight. And other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think that handles most of the issues that I want to highlight on the consent agenda, unless you have specific questions.
Okay. Anybody have any issues, concerns, questions about the consent agenda? Seeing none, entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the consent agenda as presented, raise your hand. That passes. Thank you. Or is approved, 5-0. All right, next we move to the county manager's report. Mr. Eller.
We have been very busy, to say the least, over the last few months, working on our strategic planning process, for which we'll be talking more about the next couple months with you. Our capital improvement plan, as Mr. Blackwater mentioned, also the park repurposing project that we'll talk about here shortly. I think I can't say enough of how pleased I am with our county department heads and staff. A couple big projects that we have coming up is our land use planning process that kicks off. You've already heard some importance about that and why we need to take a look at that to determine how dense or not we want to be in certain pockets of the county where we want growth to occur, where we don't, but also our master utility plan in conjunction with that. We'll kick that process off very soon and continue that throughout the next few weeks and months in cooperation with our Tri-Council, the COG. So that's something that I think is going to kind of set the stage, not only from the capital improvement plan you're doing for county facilities, but from an economic development perspective, that land use plan is going to be very, very vital and important. Concurrently, I think everybody knows our EDC partners are also going through their strategic planning process, so the timing is great for these things to align, and that's what I'm very excited about. Also want to just say thank you to Jerry Myers. All of you know he has announced his retirement. That's coming up, and we just thank him for his service, and I appreciate all the hard work our department heads have done, you know, behind the scenes that oftentimes isn't seen. There's a lot of good work happening in Davie County, and thanks to all of you for your support. And that'll conclude my report, Mr. Chairman, so we can move to old business.
Okay. All right. Any questions on the county manager's report? All right. We'll move to old business. John.
Okay. Last month you heard from our partners with McAdams and also our Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee. They put so much work into that process, and I know Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Reniger represented us well on that committee, and we kind of set the stage and forecasted tonight as we look at the conceptual master plan for this new park that we're very excited about. Phase 1 is something that we've put into planning for a long time. I think you saw the great video that was done by McAdams. We've gotten lots of positive feedback about that video from our citizens. In addition to that, we've had great partnerships with the schools as we prep for this February transition, hopefully. So just a lot of good things happening in regards to that. But tonight, before the board is really approving that master conceptual plan that you heard about last month, but also looking at two other pieces. One is the RFQ that we have in place for consultant services. We have Nick Lowe with McAdams here tonight in case any of you have questions from Nick. You have the proposal in your packet for that. That kind of sets the stage for the planning process. I will say, in partnership with McAdams, through this RFQ process, John Fuller is also involved, a local face in that regard, so he knows this property well, and has also been involved with the high school demo project and will be helping us with our demo as we move forward as well. So you will see the RFQ in your packet tonight. In addition to that, we also have a budget amendment that will need to be considered. And I'll give you some quick context on the budget amendment itself. You may recall when we initially started this process, we really didn't know at the end of phase one how the dollar amount that we would have to really see the first vision of this park. That's been realized and projected, and as a result of that, based on the advisory committee that was appointed, and based on the needs to get that phase one piece completed, what you will see before you tonight in the budget amendment is a recommendation to take the $890,000 that we had kind of set aside, if you will, for possible granting opportunities for other community recreation activities, and instead apply those dollars to the phase one project to get the full benefit of the presentation that you saw last month. You may be reminded that 6 out of 10 of the citizens' top-ranked items are going to be able to be captured in that phase one approach. So tonight with the budget amendment, you will see before you the opportunity to apply that $890,000 to really complement the full phase one at the rate of $5 million. So that's the 3 items that are before you tonight. So we're asking tonight for your approval of the master conceptual plan for the new park that was presented. In addition to that, we're asking for you to approve the contract with McAdams and allow me to negotiate, enter into a contract with them for park consulting services. And then we're also asking you to approve the budget amendment that I've mentioned. We do have, all of us here have been involved, many staff here have been involved in this project. So if you have any particular questions that I myself can answer or that they need to answer, we'll do that for you at this time.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the 3 items that are before us this evening?
Sure, I'd just like to say one thing if I could. I don't have a question, but I really appreciate the staff, Mr. Chairman, your involvement in this process. But I would say this, all 3 of these items that are before us were presented because it's a recreation group, I'll use an athletic term, by what I think were an all-star blue ribbon committee of Davie County citizens. This isn't coming to us from John, Paul, and the staff at the Recreation Department. That committee, Mr. Chairman, you know very well, represented every community in our county, every socioeconomic characteristic of our county. It probably in all my years, I mean my 3rd term, is one of the finest committees I think that we've put together to bring forward ideas and thoughts and that represented everybody.
Great.
And so I just wanted to say that because there are some changes here in terms of the dollars that we're looking at, but you know, I want you guys to know, the board to know, that these ideas and these thoughts came from the committee, not necessarily all staff, though they were great advisors and our consultants were great consultants, but this is a community-based recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I have one question about it, just to make sure I understand. We had a deal, I thought, with the Little League at one time for part of this money. What was done with, if the whole $5 million is going here, what was done with that?
We'll go ahead.
So there was, I believe, a loan that was made to the Little League. And Robin, do you want to comment as to any details surrounding that?
Yes, so we gave them a grant and a loan. The $150,000 loan is being paid back by Little League and a $150,000 grant. So it's not really $5 million, it's $5 million less the $150,000.
Okay, but there should be some premium money here somewhere that would maybe take care of
That's our
that.
expectation,
Okay,
that we will get a bond premium when we sell the bonds.
okay. I just wanted to make sure we had all of our books straight.
Yes. We won't know that amount naturally until we sell the bonds.
Right.
Yeah, as you know, that's market driven, and we're working with
Sure.
our financial consultants on that. But good question, Commissioner Ferguson.
I just want to make sure that we had, that was all straight, because I remembered there was something in that we had, some of those funds were supposedly dedicated to that, but there certainly should be enough for the $5 million to still be there, or maybe more.
We think so, and you know, there are other things that now the Rec and Park Advisory Committee, because they did what they call an a la carte menu, so we know now what is the next step, and the next step, and the next step, should other dollars be available. And I do need to say one thing before I forget it, is Energy United did donate $5,000 to this project, so I'll formally be thanking them as well.
I saw that in the agenda, the consent, the $5,000, so.
Well, not to get too far in the weeds, but on the $5 million that we're going out to bond for, the Little League loan will get repaid from that, and then we have McAdams' contract. The first contract's already been spent, and then the commitment to buy the scoreboard from the school system is in there. So those three items are committed out of the $5 million. So, for the record, so, I want to echo what Commissioner Jones said. The committee worked really hard. Those were some long meetings, some very spirited meetings, and but they worked well, and I do think we ended up with a great product. So looking forward to moving forward with this. Okay. Any other comments or questions about any of the three items before us? Okay, I guess we need to take these, seeing that, I guess we need to take these one at a time. Would probably be best. So, number one, the approval of the master conceptual plan for the new park. Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. Thank you. Next item before us is the budget amendment to allocate the entire $5 million to the repurposing project.
Make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion, have a second.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. That is approved. Third item, the consultant services contract to allow our county manager to negotiate that contract with McAdams. Entertain that motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Have a second. Have a second. Further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. That approved, 5-0. Thank you. And thank you, Nick, and your group, McAdams, and Paul. Great job. So, all right. Next, we move to new business. Any new business to come before us this evening? All right. Seeing none, the next item we have is a closed session. We have two items for closed session tonight. I will read the legalese before entertain a motion to approve both of those at the same time. So here goes. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11-3, I move to go into closed session to consult with an attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege as to pending legal action so as to give instructions concerning the handling of the claims, and pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318-11 6, I move to go into closed session to discuss the competence, performance, and fitness of an individual employee. I will make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Poindexter. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, we are in closed session. Thank you for being here, and we'll be back. Welcome back. Appreciate you staying around. We are back in open session. So at this time, I understand we have some business to come before the board. Mr. Jones, you got a motion you would like to make?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we extend the period for Mr. Eller to move to Davie County, 12 months to accommodate the market and being able to sell his house. Is that what you need right there?
I think so.
All right, there we go.
I'll second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of extending the residency requirement for 12 months to January 10th of 2018, raise your hand.
2019.
Yeah. What he said, 2019.
1 year. 18's coming up soon.
They have 8 days. All right. Yes, I'm sorry.
1/10/19.
January 10th of 2019, a full 12 months. All right. Thank you, Mr. Weisgarten. All in favor, raise your hand. 5-0. All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Ferguson, do you have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we give our manager, Mr. Eller, a 1% COLA of, I think that amounts to about $13.80, and we give him a bonus of $21.20, which brings it up to about $3,500.
That would be it. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second.
Have a second.
Any discussion? The 2120, would be a performance bonus?
Performance bonus, right,
Okay.
21.20.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. That passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, we move to commissioners' comments, and the hour's late. I would entertain a motion to dispense with those.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second.
I assume you're directing staff to prepare an addendum to that contract.
Yes.
As part of that motion.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, one thing I would like to bring forth to the board is that we remember former Commissioner Burt Bonson is in real bad health, so we just need to lift him up in our prayers.
And wish everybody a very Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. Mr. Bonson, I'm glad you mentioned that. He's pretty bad. So. All right. Thank you for hanging around, and appreciate the support. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor? 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you.
What is